NASCAR race, a money maker. I'm just getting my feet wet.
Welcome to the Tourage podcast.
Sure, I see me. I'm a pilot. To the coupe, I'm speeding. NASCAR race, a money maker. I'm just getting my feet wet. Fuck that.
Is it
Yes,
Devika? That's how you pronounce it?
Devika.
Devika.
Yes.
I like that even better. Okay,
Thank
good.
you. Thank you so much for coming on, first of all.
Yeah, thank you for asking me on. I had actually recently connected with whomever's running the 137 account.
Right.
And so it was funny that you reached out to me because of that. Yeah, I've been seeing 37 my entire life very repetitively every single day.
I know.
And then around the time my brother was 10, he's 3.5 years younger than me. He said, "You're going to think I'm crazy, but my whole life I've been seeing the number 37, and now it's almost used as like a signal from somewhere else." It's kind of weird. Because of what I'm doing with my podcast right now, I think they started looking into that a little bit as well, and then we had been talking and going back and forth. But everybody would send me the 137 page because people like know me as the person who always sees that now as well.
Yes.
So it was funny when we connected about it. So
I know they follow like some really solid creators. So for me to like find people like guests on my podcast, I'm very like Gary oriented, and I've learned so much from him. So I know that even the people they follow are the people Gary makes sure that he wants to keep in touch with are people with like real substance. So it's a great place for me to, like navigate how to move forward.
that's awesome. And where in the world exactly are you?
I'm in India, and specifically in Lucknow, which is a city. So that's where I'm at. And I had major plans to go to LA and stuff for interning and things like that. And that's how I started networking with people in the same industry and around like the whole, geographic area.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of really popular creatives, business leaders that talk about the importance of the first 10 minutes of your day and the last 10 minutes of your day. So I definitely have built in a routine of, regardless of how the day goes, the last 10 and first 10 are dedicated towards visualization, what I want in this day, how I want it to go, how I want to project myself, and staying away from my phone. I make sure I stay away from my phone until I'm very least out of my bed, but I like to get my morning going without my phone.
Yeah. Do you believe like a lot in like affirmations and all those exercises?
Oh, 100, definitely, yeah.
So what is something that you do? Do you say like stuff to yourself in the mirror? Do you write things down?
Both, but I think where I do the most definitely, I became a daily meditator, and so if I ever skip that, it's still 5 days a week, but I fell into the bucket of becoming a daily meditator probably about 2.5, 3 years ago. I'd always been pulled to it. I'd always been interested in it, but I didn't actually ingrain it as a habit until about 3 years ago. So depending on the day, I will spend some time in my meditation just visualizing what I want to happen, who I want to be, seeing myself as that person, the goals that I want to accomplish. And, for everybody that doesn't believe in those sorts of things, to me, it's, hey, even if it was all bullshit, you've done nothing but spend some time actually being positive and trying to bring the light towards you. So that's got to be better than being negative.
100%.
It's got to have an effect.
Yeah, even though you might not see like an external effect, it does like majorly influence how you feel, and how you feel is how you operate at the end of the day. So that results in like good stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I can't agree more with that. You got to get your inside right before your outside will ever be right. You got to work on yourself on the inside.
I see your bio says like Bodhisattva in training. By any chance, do you practice Buddhism?
I'm familiar, and I think that I definitely practice some aspects of it in my everyday life, but I'm not really devout in any one particular area. I kind of love to soak up the knowledge from all the different areas and then, make it my own. I'll be reading a book about Buddhism one day. I'll be reading a book about just something more aligned with Alan Watts and all the different spiritualities another
Yeah.
day. But the Bodhisattva piece, I just think the first time I ever heard about what a Bodhisattva is, and I think the most general way I would break it down is you have like a Pratyeka Buddha who kind of goes into their own nirvana and goes out alone. And when I was a little kid, I even used to tell my father, I used to say, I feel like a lot of the world is going to shit because all the good people, they don't do anything about it. They just stand by and let it all go bad. So I've
Yeah.
always kind of been up on a rock screaming and shouting about the good things or wanting to be better and trying to be better.
Yeah.
And the Bodhisattva kind of goes away on the journey, experiences some of that, and then wants to share his story. And that's definitely me to a T, but in training.
Yes, that's actually really accurate. Like I do practice Buddhism, so it was super fascinating to read that on your bio. And exactly what you said, like there's a Buddha and then there's Bodhisattva. And the only difference between the two is like a Bodhisattva is a Buddha in action, you know. It's not like sitting and absorbing and, you know, like just being like super enlightened, but it's taking that all in, absorbing everything, and then emptying yourself out, you know, to people and, you know, like just to pass that out.
Yeah, and you get something from that. I think it is equally important to have someone who's willing to listen as it is to have someone that it is to give the message. You need a good set of ears that's willing to listen to the message as well. And when you do things like this conversation or when you talk to people, when you put words out into the world, you could call that manifestation, but it makes a plan tangible. So even if there's something that you don't really have a grip on yet, after the 5th, 6th, 7th person you've been bouncing this idea off of and synthesizing it, you yourself become better at relaying the message.
Yeah.
And then those ripple effects in the pond just hit anybody that they ever talk to and act in front of as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. I feel like, you know, people sometimes who are super like focused on their careers and what they want to do forget how important it is to build yourself as a human being. And these things are the very foundation of, you know, like how your mind is and how your heart is and how your soul is, you know, like I don't know if you believe, I'm sure you do, but these like as long as your foundation is really strong, anything you do on top of that, it gets emanated through, you know.
For sure. It's like one of my favorite metaphors is, or I don't know exactly what you'd call it, but just if you drop a stone in a pond, that eventually, no matter how faint, the ripples reach the entire edge of the pond. So it's kind of every time someone makes a painting or has a conversation or the whole dragonfly flutters its wings in India and creates a tsunami in the Philippines type of a thing, the butterfly effect. I definitely believe that's real, and I feel like I feel like everything everyone does has an influence on the global consciousness. I think it's all
100%.
we are all connected, you know. Definitely.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that we connected on that. It's so interesting. To go on your work, you have amazing photographs and really dope films that I checked out, and your profile says
Thank
you're a
you.
director. So how did you get started into, you know, creating content and stuff?
To answer the question the right way, I'll backtrack a little bit first. When I was a kid, my dad got me a 5.1 megapixel camera, a little digital camera. I forget how old I was. Maybe I was like 13 or something like that. And I was just so fascinated and interested with taking pictures, documenting the journey, documenting the process before I even knew how to put it into words. I would make films with just the program that came with the computers back in the day that there are things that I don't even know how I would recreate it now if I was making them. I was just so interested in making things like that and visualizing things. And as humans, we're visual learners, so I felt like, you know, a picture is worth 10,000 words, 1,000 words, whatever it is. Could you imagine what a video could do? So I've always been big in entertainment, music, and film. And then I went to school. A lot of stuff happened to me in school. We could get into that later. But after I got out of college, I got into corporate America. I was in a sales position selling business intelligence, predictive analytics software. I rose up very quickly in that career. I was on my way to be VP. I did a great job at it. I managed and raised business development and sales teams. But I fucking hated my life. I did not First of all, everything I loved about myself needed to disappear. Social media had to be private. Half of so much of what made me, I
Yeah.
could no longer be. And then everything else starts tethering away as well. Like your relationships with family and friends, your health, your sleep. It's the most important things just started to go by the wayside. So around the age of 27 or so, I was just like, you know what? It is not too late. I need to get out of this, and I don't care if I have to start at the bottom again. You know, you go from making six figures to making damn near above the poverty line. It's a big adjustment, but
Of course.
you got to be willing to give some stuff up. And I'd had this idea of starting a podcast and getting back into film, and I think really it had always been there. It had always been a passion of mine, but I turned inward and said, if I'm going to pursue something and make something a career, even if it's like what Gary Vee says, you know, you could be really smart, work your ass off for someone else and make some good money in a couple years, or you could eat shit for 9 years and do it yourself on the 10th. So what am I going to eat shit? What kind of shit am I going to eat? What were the things that when I was a kid, before sex, money, drugs, parties, what were the things that I just lost hours in? The flow state, this circle right here, right? What could I get into flow state for and was just passionate about and absolutely loved? Because to me, that's a safe bet for anybody. Anyone that has anything like that they can name, it doesn't matter if you don't make any money off it per the start. A healthy investment in finance and everything else is 5 to 7 years. It's going to take a while. What could I invest my time in that I knew would be a safe bet that later on I'd still love to do it? And I've always loved talking with people, and I've always loved film and the entertainment industry. So I figured, okay, let's create a generation machine for the artist, anybody who creates.
Yeah.
And if you come on my podcast, then what I would like it to be is like an acceleration machine for art. Here I am using film as an art, conversation as an art, but in a way to give this person a platform. Because as far as back as I can remember, if you sent me a song I loved, that song would be in like 20 people's inboxes within the second time I'm listening to it. I had a radio show in college. I've always wanted to
Wow,
promote.
you've really been in the game for a while.
I mean, I suppose so. As low level as it was, definitely.
But it was
I've
still
always
something. It was
so.
definitely a lead.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And I mean, if you can do something and work more than a full-time job's worth of hours on it in a week and not get paid for it, it'll turn into something eventually.
100%.
So you just can't stop. So yeah, it's a long way to answer your question. I've always been interested in film photography in the moment and capturing the moment. I think that's so important. Have you ever seen the show Taxi Cab Confessions?
No.
Okay. It is a show where in New York and Las Vegas, they have a taxi cab all mic'd up and all cameraed up. And the people who drive are also kind of like, they're great conversationalists and interviewers. The people that get in the car have no idea they're being recorded.
Oh
and
my
at the
God.
end, they can get permission or not. That show, I watched as a little kid. I wasn't supposed to be watching it. And it influenced me so much because people get in the car, and whatever stereotype you may have about this individual, whether it was a prostitute, a sex worker, someone who works with dead bodies, a paramedic, whatever you might have thought about them, after the conversation you realized how wrong you were and how good of a person that they were. So I feel like sharing people's stories is one of the most important things that we could do to make the world a better place.
Agree. How fascinating is that? But before releasing an episode, would they take permission from the person that, hey, you were being recorded just by the way?
Have you ever gotten into a cab and realized your willingness to talk to this complete stranger? And I think a lot of them realized at the end of the conversation that I've never been this honest with anybody, and they made me feel a certain way. So I would like other people to know this, and they sign off on it.
I know.
So,
I think it's the best way to capture like real authenticity is just documenting stuff instead of like trying to sound a certain way. You're just like you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, 100%.
How fascinating.
That's why and that's why I love this. That's why I'm like,
Yeah.
yup, you want to do a podcast? You said you want to do a podcast? I'm like, let's do it. I mean, I'd love to be in the room with you, but clearly I'm in an island in the middle of the Pacific and you're in India. It's a little bit more difficult.
I know.
But the world
hey,
lacks sincere interaction.
I know, and I started doing these interviews early 2019 before COVID, and having like virtual interviews wasn't a thing. It started after COVID, but I felt like just because I'm not physically present in an area, that should not stop me in the 21st century, to make a conversation, to network, and to get to know people. And that's how it started, and it's been great like that.
Yeah, I love what you're doing. I went through some of the interviews. It looks like you've been able to talk to a lot of different people.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you gotta. There's something about going back sometimes and looking at your work that you'll forget. How many different people you've been able to interact with, and those are all stones in the pond. Those are all the ripple effects.
100%.
It's making a difference.
Yeah, and you never know like how a person might turn out or what kind of an impact they might have on you, because podcasts are usually very guest oriented, of course, and they're always like, an artist, a celebrity, someone who's super known, someone who's accomplished something, them sharing stuff. And when I was starting, I had no leverage, so why would anyone come on my podcast? I just started reaching out to people who were just like me, who were just starting out. And even though one might feel like, wow, like, what's the ROI of someone like that? But just building a relationship and networking and having a real conversation and, hyping each other up and encouraging each other. And 5 years from now, like, you would feel like, wow, I've really known them from the beginning and stuff like that, So
Yeah,
it's been
definitely.
super cool.
Do you mind me asking how old you are?
No. I'm 22.
22?
Yeah.
Okay, you're a good old soul. So, I feel like it took me a little bit longer to realize this, but I'm 31. But maybe I just didn't know how to put it into words when I was younger. But I realized that first of all, intuition is 100% real, and people need to make sure they start following their guts. You can get what you want, even if it's the wrong thing for you, but life will make you pay for it in a bunch of ways of things not working out with it later on. And so you need to follow your intuition. The other thing is that when you are doing the right thing and you're networking and you're running into these different people, a funny thing happens. The way I describe it is like the air between you and them feels thinner. It seems easier to connect with this person from before you've ever said one word to them. It feels more natural, almost as if you were to look at some geometry. They're on a line with you. They're not like off to the side or in the middle. It's easier to interact with them. And I feel like when you're supposed to meet certain people or interact with certain people, you get this feeling that it feels easier. The air is thinner. It's easier to talk with them. It's easier to open up with them, and etc. I felt that from the moment that you reached out to me. So I was like, 100%, we're going to have to do this podcast.
Thanks so much. I think that's so cool. And I think like I admire people who have the courage to, say yes, because it's a random person asking you for like a random interview. And a lot of people have like preconceived notions of, I'm not sure how that would go, or, I'm not sure how that would play out because one might not get too many views or something like that. But I really admire people who are able to look beyond, the obvious and they're able to see like, return on investment on doing this. So thanks so much for doing that, by the way. And
you're welcome. My pleasure.
Yeah, I'm so glad. And I see you follow Gary. So do you consume his content a lot?
Oh yeah, definitely. My brother always tells me when I get on a roll talking about business myself that he's like, you just make me think of Gary Vee. So I feel like from a business perspective, I definitely agree with so much of what he says. Also from I'm not sure how much he would get into the spiritual end of things, but the guy's definitely spiritual, whether or not he goes bringing up, spiritual like names and concepts, but he definitely is. So I think that there's some fundamentals that I love by him. For example, the jab, 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 right hook, left hook, that is so important. Just there are certain principles you learn in business that once you know the way broadly, you can apply it in all things. And jab, 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 left hook is one of the smartest business or social media or whatever it comes to networking or customer-centric, audience-centric things that you could ever possibly do. Give someone a little something, give someone a little something, give someone a little something, ask for something, and it will give it to you. But I am big on, I'm trying to implement documenting the process more right now. So
You are, aren't you?
But from the time that you see any post on the podcast Instagram, there's been a minimum of 30 hours worth of work that's gone into that. So that is not doing any of the highlights or that is just from the moment before they sat down, we talked, and the editing to get it to look the way it does, that's 30 hours. So every artist should budget their work. If you want to know what you're worth in the long run, you need to know how many hours this is taking, where you can trim fat, where you can become more efficient.
Yeah.
I would like to, over the next couple of years, become a lot better at, let me take you behind the scenes and show you why I edited it this way. Because I don't just cut the interview so that you have 3 different cameras. I cut it because people do things like they go like this when they are uncomfortable. Their eyes move in different directions when they look for a specific answer. They look a certain way when they're confused. And I think because the world lacks sincere communication, especially for people under the, that are just going through college right now, with COVID too, they can't even be in front of people and see their entire face.
Yeah.
I need to show you that something happens between 2 people's heads, whether at this distance between Hawaii and India or right in front of each other.
Yeah.
It's like there's a river of thought between our heads, and the moment I think of something else while you're talking, I can put some energy towards that river. And me doing that and not letting it go will make you forget your train of thought. And I'm trying to show people that this actually happens so that they could become better communicators themselves. Even if it's just a podcast of talking a bunch of nonsense and laughing and has nothing to do with spirituality. I want the screen to show you visually what is happening between 2 people. So I think documenting that and showing me while I edit an interview, that would be my first real step in documenting the process. I might actually get more views and more people paying attention to me as some random person when it comes to how I edit than it comes to, you don't know me and you don't know my guests, so why should you listen type of a thing.
I think the biggest aspect of like social media and communication is just capturing that authenticity, and that is what you're so consciously attentive of. And I think that's so great because about social media is people are always trying to project like a persona of, a PR version of themselves, like I'm perfect and I'm about my shit. But when people are actually confused, when people are actually like doubting themselves or nervous and whatnot, when it's not super polished, that is what actually helps a person watching, where they're able to relate with that and that impacts them instead of feeling like, wow, this is so far off from me, like I don't even relate with this, So that communication hits them different. And for you to be capturing that, I think is so refreshing to hear. That's amazing.
Oh, thank you. You're doing the same thing. Although we're doing it in a digital way, you are doing the exact same thing. I like to think of it as if you looked at a pie chart for all of the media going on in the world, you and I fulfill this very small sliver of actual, real shit.
Yeah.
There's no agenda. There's, there might be things that we're interested in, but the conversation can take us where it goes. And that's how life actually is. As a matter of fact, you get to some of the best stuff an hour after you've forgotten that you wanted to ask a question, and someone goes, remember how you just said this? Well, it's exactly like this. And then everybody understands it, and it's so much better that way.
I know, my God. I swear. Like, I feel like because when people come on YouTube and they're watching, right? They start from like, they're watching the first 5-10 minutes and they're like, oh my God, these guys are kind of awkward or whatever. And I put the whole thing there right from the start to the end. But we're having like the most intense and the most amazing conversation at the end of the video, because that time we're all in each other's zone and we've gotten to know each other. And you get it so much because you also do a podcast. So I'm sure like you are aware of the nuances of it. But I think what I feel like the biggest asset of documenting is, I feel like even for me right now, it's not about watching it now, but I'm kind of leaving a trail or like creating a blueprint on when I hit after 7 years or whatever, that's when this would make a lot of sense. When me just talking about shit might not have context right now, but when you see like me all perfect and unattainable and whatnot, you're able to see how this wasn't like just I got lucky in a night, but how this was like years and years and years worth of work and effort every single day. And having that all documented, I think is like the coolest thing ever. And Gary even spoke about it. Imagine Drake before he was Drake. And I always like to remember that context. I feel like that is what we're doing.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And we both definitely agree on that then, because there are a lot of, you'll notice now with people as they get a little bit more popular in whatever craft that they're doing, you see these things going on where you look at someone's Instagram page and they only have 3 or 5 posts. They've taken out all of the ones that didn't do well or that aren't pretty enough or that aren't exactly. I'm the complete opposite of that. I want you to see what was complete dog shit that I made a while ago. That was horrible. I didn't know the placement of it. The audio was messed up. I want you to see all of that. So someone else starting out can know like it is possible.
Yeah.
You do get better every single time, a little bit at a time. Like the equipment I used in episode 1 is the exact same equipment I used in episode 30, and that looks dramatically different from what you learn in the nuances of things.
Yeah.
And before I forget, your point about the first 5 or 10 minutes being kind of, and like the last end of the conversation, that's when things are really moving. So after episode, I think it was 5, my buddy Jared came on. Jared's a close friend of mine, but even Jared in the first 10-15 minutes wasn't actually Jared,
Yeah.
He walks into my place, there's a lighting rack on the ceiling, there's cameras on, he sees me turn on the cameras. So one thing that has helped me a lot with doing conversations with people is before I open up the door to let them into my studio, all the cameras are recording and the mics are already recording and on.
Wow.
So we sit down and we're doing the bullshitting pre-interview type of things, and that's all being recorded. And I say we could start, and I don't need to get up and excuse myself. They don't need to see any of the cameras on, and that helps reduce that time of getting things going.
Yeah.
And then if you notice on the Instagram now, I only post like the first 2 to 5 minutes where I make an introduction of this person. I have several questions that I ask them, but I don't ask them those questions until we've already talked for 2 hours. So by this point, so at the end of the conversation, I say, okay, you could look into this camera or you could look at me. I'm going to take pictures of you because not all my guests have professional pictures if I want to use them on social media later.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take pictures of you, but I'd like you to answer these questions. What's your name? Where are you at? Where are you from? What do you do? What do you say your purpose is? What is something that you needed to sacrifice in order to make that happen? And what is one of the most important things you've learned along the way? And by this point, they've been primed for 2 hours. They know who I am.
Yeah.
We've interacted, we've already talked, and they give a really good answer then. So that helped my process so much when it came to promoting later on. Because otherwise you're trying to make this introduction out of pieces of an interview that's an hour long, and you got to go back, and how does this work? His tone's different here than it is there. It's very frustrating.
It's hilarious because both of us have a podcast. I completely get what you're saying. Like, I've delayed editing a podcast because I could not get the first 10 seconds of an introduction. I'm like, I don't know how to do this, man. Like, I've edited my whole thing, but I can't post it because I need to give some context, before it starts. And it's a struggle. But that's really smart. And I can't believe, so you record for almost like 3 hours?
Yeah, so no more over 3 hours, but I'll cut them at 3 hours. So I tell people it's a long format conversation, 1 to 3 hours.
And did you ever have problem with people being able to commit to such a long time?
Nope.
Wow.
I tell them how long to budget out, especially if they're a busier person. But I say it typically is between 1 to 3 hours, and it's a vortex. Once they start talking, 3 hours goes by and they never, or they're always like, "Are you kidding me? 3 hours has gone by." You get into it, that river gets flowing, and you just get into the flow state of conversation. And it's important to have on guests that you actually care about, not because they have a big platform or someone else. You know, Tourage is short for the Enlightened Entourage, and Tourage is just a word that I made up that basically means you and I have Tourage because we both have a relationship and like the 137 page, right? So you and I could be strangers in a supermarket, and I could walk past you, and I can see you on the 137 page on your phone, and immediately every barrier of communication that would normally be between two strangers gets lowered because we already have this thing in common, right? Tourage is the shared passion, love, interest, moral value type of a thing. If you have guests on that you actually care about and you want to interact with, you'll have no problem with it being a long conversation. And if it cuts off, it cuts off. You know, you got to cut it short. You got to cut it short. But it's not an issue for people to commit. But I have had people that do have a bigger following and definitely thought it was going to be an interview. And you see that dramatically shift about 30 or 45 minutes in because my ass is telling a story about my childhood or something in order to relate to them, and they quickly realize this is not a standard interview. But they're better that way. They're much better that way.
I 100% agree. I feel like the world needs more of like just real shit, you know, instead of super scripted and polished answer. And when you actually catch people off guard, that's when you get the real good shit. So it's great. And I feel like because you're so in tune with like your spirituality and, you know, like just you're so in tune with your own self that you would be able to transcend differences when you're speaking with other people, because now you don't have the thing in common that you think, oh my God, like business or 1:37 p.m. or whatnot. But you feel like I'm a human. I know so much about like my consciousness and I'm aware of it, and he's a human. So we already have a lot in common. And because you're so consciously aware about your own self, does that make sense? You know, you're able to pick up on them much faster and actually be genuinely interested in them.
Definitely. And vulnerability is a huge thing. I was younger, I heard that quote, that vulnerability is the highest form of courage. And that stuck with me. I think when I first heard that quote, I didn't necessarily understand it, but then as I got older, I understood it more and more. And I think it's very important to open and vulnerable about the tough, depressing type of life struggles that people get. Because they will open up to you if you open up to them. And that goes for both, you know, a deep story, a deep loss, something about depression, or just many of life's struggles. If you can open up and tell someone about yours, they can open up to you in the same regard. And you know, I've learned a lot of valuable lessons when it comes to communication in general. And if you if you start with yourself, if you don't start with yourself and you begin to ask them a question, they could just start putting up blocks, making a wall in order to not get through. Maybe they're going to be too assumptive about me, or they're going to think that that's wrong. If you tell them a story about how you went through it and what you realized, they're going to know immediately what they feel like they can and cannot say to you.
I 100% agree. I actually read this quote from one of the podcasts which said, the way people connect differently on pain. You know what I'm saying? Like you and I can relate, like, oh my God, we like a football team or whatever, we might have a conversation. But if you and I connect on each other's pain and we're able to relate with that is something that's really irreplaceable, and that establishes a very different kind of bond that we would build than if we were just talking about, you know, like our favorite hobbies or some shit like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's weird. I've never thought about it like how you just said it, but connecting on pain is definitely a primary theme of what I do. It's a driver for why I started it. I've gone through a lot of really difficult things in my life, and a lot of them I just felt like shit, if there was one person that I could have talked to about this that I felt like understood to some degree how much easier the struggles that I've gone through would have been for me, you know? Right. So I feel like a lot of healing comes from talking about it as well.
Yes.
Most people don't sit down, you know, like this conversation you and I are having and the conversations we have with other people. especially when you do have the chance to do it in person. The fact of the matter is that most people that come on my podcast within the last few years had nobody, even close family and friends, that they sat down and had a sincere interaction with no phone and no distractions for more than 25, 30 minutes. No TV in the background, just interacting. So a lot of healing can come from a conversation like that. And I don't know about you, but some of the shit that I've been through, some of the most liberating days of my life were moments where, whether it be in some form of cinema or a podcast from someone else, that I heard them talking about exactly how I felt, and I thought no one else could feel that way. And it's like, okay, like I feel a little bit freer now. I don't feel like I'm so alone. That makes a big difference in the world.
I know. I agree 100%. That is why I fell in love with listening to hip hop, and I love BTS, so I fell in love with them, is because I also felt like super alone, and I always felt like an outcast, and I felt like shit I'm going through. I can't even speak with people because they can't comprehend it, and I don't want to put that burden on them, so might as well not talk about it. But listening to music actually felt like, wow, if he's going through it and I'm going through it, we're in it together, and that brought so much comfort and ease. And I wasn't hanging out with chips on my shoulder. I was able to dust it off and be like, what I've went through, people gone through worse. Like, we can get through this shit, So 100%. When you're able to relate with someone, it's very powerful because you feel like someone's got your back, even if they might not be aware of it. So it's definitely very comforting.
I'm glad you brought that up. And hip hop. Oh, I got Wu-Tang tattooed on my wrist, right on my pulse.
Oh, show me. I can't see it. Show it to me a little towards the left.
I got the Wu-Tang sign right on my pulse.
Oh, cool.
It's just, I love all music, but the other night my brother and I were sitting out on the lanai, the balcony here, and we were talking, and we were saying, I love all music, and there's some music, it depends on my mood for what I'm really going to listen to, but number one for me has always been hip-hop, and you can't, one of the most special, I related to hip-hop because of pain in the first place. I had a difficult childhood, and I felt like that, out of all the genres in hip-hop, were people that could at least understand what I was going through, right? We didn't have much money. It was home environment could be a little bit hectic. The struggles of money really were always in hip hop. But the important thing he said the other night was, there is no other genre like hip hop that you could get as much knowledge out of. You might be, music can transcend words, so you could find knowledge in jazz, but as a whole, for what it can deliver messages and words, there can be a hip hop song, and if that's a good artist, one line out of the 45 to 80 lines in there, just one line can give you a lesson or principle for life, and let alone the rest of the entire song. You could get so much out of hip hop. So that's definitely one of the reasons why it's my favorite too.
I agree. You know why? Because I feel like the reason for that is, for like music like jazz or country or whatever, it's very rhythm oriented, like you like the song, you're feeling the vibes and whatnot. But something with hip hop, like rap's full form is like rhythmically applied poetry. So there, you're not dependent on the beat. You're more dependent on what the fuck is he saying, So you gotta lay it out there. And rap was always about communicating. And since those people had really intense histories, they did not have the luxury to continuously just be falling in love. And what music was earlier about, It was about like, fuck, I got no clothes, I got no money. Fuck this shit, I don't know how to get out. So it was them like steaming off and sharing their journeys through music. And it was such an effective communicator as a genre. Where that's why I feel like people who connect with hip hop are like just so intensely into it for the artist. You stop fucking with the music anymore. You're in it for the artist. You're like, I love his story. I love him as a human, and that's why I enjoy his music.
Yeah, that's a really good point. One thing, people have these conversations of who's the GOAT, or who do you like, J. Cole or Kendrick Lamar, and it's like, listen, if you would never walk into an art gallery and you have two different artists, they paint dramatically differently. They're both amazing. You're never gonna try to throw them up against each other.
Yeah.
They're in completely different categories. You
Yeah.
gotta respect it as if it was an actual painting. So that's that's as we're talking about hip hop. I can't. Did you see the last one that I posted with this guy SD Knack? He came on the podcast.
Yes, I watched it a little bit. He's super about his shit, and I never obviously have not heard him and stuff like that. But what I thought was really cool for you to do, the great thing about hip hop is and hosting artists is once they hit, you were the first one to kind of figure it out, and you have it documented. Like, bro, I knew this guy before he blew up. And you gave him that respect and attention. So I thought that was really cool, and that really would play out in a great way for you.
Yeah, and although it's not something that you bank on, it is a good feeling, and it's also nice to know that I highly doubt any of my guests are going to talk to anyone else that is a long format conversation. They're gonna get interviewed, but they're not gonna. They may not have a conversation. And with so have you heard of, you like hip hop? Have you heard of Griselda, Benny the Butcher, West Side Gun, and Conway? Okay, they are like the Wu-Tang of today, and they are, at least as popularity goes, not opinion, but popularity goes, they are in the forefront of the gangster rap, I guess you would call it renaissance, like for right now, like a re-enlightening of gangster rap. People that may not have choruses, they just spit all the way through. So SD Knack's been on some of their albums, and the funniest part about that, and this just goes to show you how the universe works, is I used to live near New York City, did cypher hip-hop sessions weekly, because I love hip-hop, but I know I'm not going to be a famous rapper. It's a hobby. So I would go into New York City, and there's a hip-hop cultural ambassador. She ran cypher sessions, so 10 to 20 people in a circle that are spitting, freestyling off the top of the head. SD Knack, this is 6 years ago, shows up with a guy from Worcester, Massachusetts to our session because they had networked with the lady running it. 6 years later, I find myself living in the town next over from the guy who came down, SETI, and SD Knack. Another kid comes on my podcast. We're talking about how I used to do hip-hop cypher sessions in the city and how this guy SETI came down. He goes, oh, he probably came with SD Knack. You should have him on your podcast. I take a clip of that podcast, send it to SD Knack, like, bro, we got to talk before I move to Hawaii. You got to come out here. And it's like all of that, that's, 6 years in the making of little things and connections that slowly bring you closer to other people.
Yeah.
But he will be successful for sure. There's a lot of people that have been on my podcast that they will make it. They're not, same thing goes for you and I. Don't quit. You just can't quit. If you commit to not quitting, then you get a little bit less anxiety in your day. If you know it's going to take 7 years before maybe you get a little nice gold nugget of some kudos and praise, then your 1 year to 7 years is less anxious on your day to day. It's okay that it's not happening for me right now. I'll reassess it in 5 years and we'll see. But know how to adjust your expectations and things can become great.
Of course, and like you and I, we're not stopped working. We're constantly doing shit. So that it's just a matter of time that we're constantly in momentum, So it's just a matter of time that when it hits. And luck favors the prepared. So when the opportunity actually comes to you, you're prepared. But if you're just sitting and waiting for the opportunity, it might come to you and you would not be prepared. That would be the worst. So I think it's not on us to depend on results or depend on opportunity. It's on us to keep on doing. And when it comes, it comes. That's what Gary also says, focus on the process, focus on the journey. And even the journey breeds your soul. That's why you're doing it. You're not actually, we are doing it for the result and the money. But essentially, the journey is such a big aspect of it that we're happy and feel so content. Like, wow, man, I did something that is so true to me.
Yeah, a lot of people bring up that it's when they really started making it about the work and not what they would get from the work, is that's when the ball started to roll. And have you ever read the book Outliers?
I've heard a lot about it.
Okay. Here's the Samson comedic way of summing up Outliers. Okay. Life is, it's weird. I'm not sure how spiritual the guy that wrote Outliers was, but it's definitely a combination of chance and genius. So a lot of the book breaks down that the people that become super huge, Bill Gates, even he doesn't bring up Joe Rogan, but Joe Rogan would be another one. These people that get on a massive level, it's not, they were one of many that was working extremely hard and grinding out. But the what you find in common with all of them is that they were all people on their way to 10,000 hours of mastery in a particular thing when the opportunity hits. So to your point, you need to be working so you're prepared to take on that opportunity when it comes. If that opportunity comes and you're over here slacking with 500 hours towards your 10,000 hour mastery goal, you're not going to be able to take it on. And this is where I like Gary a lot too. He gets very budget oriented with a lot of the things that he talks about. So for me, one of the biggest pulls of getting out of that career that I was unhappy at and everything else is people will say, and even Gary Vee will say it, that you can pursue your dream after your 9 to 5. Right? You could spend your 5 to 9 pursuing your dream. Now, for me, here's where I think slightly differently than Gary. He's a different kind of human.
He's a different breed. He's a different animal.
He's on Adderall all day long, even without the Adderall. He doesn't even need. That's just how he is, you know. I mean, I don't know if he is or not, but that's my perception. He's got a different. He's locked into an energy stream that's higher than mine. 100%. I know me, right? Knowledge of self is very important. I know me. I know that for myself, I need to be a particular kind of person after my 9 to 5, from 5 until the time I go to bed, in order to do a good job at my 9 to 5 in the morning. I need to go to bed at a certain time. I need to act a specific way, how I get my clothes together, everything about how tomorrow plays out. That's not enough time for me. So if I want to master something that is not my 9 to 5, how many hours can I actually put in? And what you find is that if you put in 20 hours a week, it's going to take you 10 years to become a master at something. That's how long it'll take you to get to your 10,000 hour goal. So 9 to 5 does not allow me to put in 20 hours a week while also fulfilling my spiritual and physical and mental well-being. I can't also go to the gym, spend good time with family and friends, get adequate sleep and eat healthy if I'm also having a 9 to 5. So that's where I was like, okay, buckle down, live within your means, need less, get a part-time job that can keep my head above water, and spend at least 20 to 30 hours a week on the dream while getting enough money from something else. So say not many people can make that sacrifice. I mean, you're in a good position. You're 22. You get the ball rolling the right way now. You're in a very, very good position. But there are a lot of people that are in their late 20s, early 30s that have settled on a particular lifestyle, a particular means of income, and etc., and think that there is no other way but that. They live beyond their means because they're, for the ones in America at least, in a more affluent country, they think they need a certain kind of car. They think they need a certain type of place to eat out. They think that the only way to have fun is to spend money. And if you've grown up seeing that as your expectation of how to live a life, and that's what you're in now, a lot of people are not willing to make that sacrifice. I started fasting because I could only afford a meal a day, not because it was the healthy thing to do. You know, like you need to, it takes time to, and it takes a lot of sacrifice to get where you want to be.
I think, first of all, so much respect for you after hearing that. And I think the biggest thing Gary talks about is self-awareness, like you're aware. And another thing about the 9 to 5 thing where he mentions is there's so many people who think that they want to do something because they hate their job. It's not that they're passionate about something or they're willing to dedicate that time. So he's like, instead of, just be like, fuck job and I'm going to give it my all, and neither you have this, neither you have that. So if you really want to get to know yourself, and if you want to know that it is something, do I really want to expand into it and lean into it more? So that just perspective gives you the luxury of having both at the same time. But if you know what you're about, there's no question in, like you said, go with your intuition and do it. A lot of people just don't have that strong sense of self and strong sense of like that definitiveness that this is what I want to do. They're like, I might be into it, I might be good at this. So for them, this works out. Like if you think you're a might person, then you try it out. You got both ways. And I think I have so much respect for you because you know who you are, you know your weakness, and you know your strengths, and you also know what the fuck it takes, man. So after having all that infrastructure in your head, that's when you made the decision, you know. A lot of people want to make that decision in a whim when they want to escape hard work at their job and they're like, oh, you know, like I'm going to become an entrepreneur in a year. For them, that perspective helps them give the leverage, like, okay, don't go too stupid. You know what I'm saying?
100%. And I think to your point, whether you're an all-in person and you're definitive about it and you already know, or you are someone that is on the fence and might want to take up something else, the reminder to both people, this shit does not happen overnight. Just you gotta bust your ass for a long time, and it's years worth. And this goes back to the hours thing. You know, I'm confident in saying that in 5 to 7 years, if I don't think it can be something, I will readjust my expectations then. But that's because 5 to 7 years marks a minimum of 10 to 30 hours a week that I've been putting in. I have a decent base or template that I can say, okay, I've actually been working towards the 10,000 hours here.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of time invested into it. If you're a might person, it's going to take even longer. You know, unless you just by the graces of God something hits. So we live in a society where everything is now. You know, you want everything now. Everything happens now. You want to watch that movie? Which platform am I going to open up? You know, you're just scrolling. You're getting the next thing.
Yeah.
The things that mean stuff in every capacity of life are delayed gratification and long-term investments.
Yeah, and you just being aware of that just tells how prepared you are, because a lot of people don't want to accept that reality. They're like, I'm special, I'm different, I'm going to make it happen quick. And it never goes like that, you know what I'm saying? You'd be surprised how many people are under that expectation and they don't want to face reality where, you know, your mom might tell you that you're special, but you know what? In the real world, this is how it is, you know?
Yeah, that's funny.
And hard work beats talent. So irrespective of how talented you are, if you actually want to make a career out of your talent, it actually is business at the end of the day. You got to execute. So you could have, like, by God's gift, the best voice in the world, and you might be a genius. But if you're not able to execute on that asset, it's as good as nothing. So that's huge.
That's very, very, very true. There are a lot of people that might be able to tell you oh, you know, you're doing that wrong. You should post it this way, and you should make it like this, and you know, put it in this order, and this is how the bio should look, and whatever. But very few are willing to put in the hours of actually doing it, and to understand the caveats and nuances that come with the work and in between. And let's not forget here, you need a balance of many other things in life aside. You can't just go after, like for me at least, I need that short list I brought up in the beginning of the call, right? In every day, I try to spend some sincere interaction with close family and friends. I try to eat healthy, break a sweat, get good sleep, and every time I get to the fifth one, I lose it. But meditate, right? If I could fulfill those things, it can't be a bad day. So even in my most depressed times, anxious times, you know, grieving times, if I could do that, it does something to help keep you afloat. So as long as you can put in the work and have a healthy balance for your mind, body, and soul in other places, I think that does a lot for people.
I know. I'm just so happy to hear that, you know, because so many times you see people with great ambitions and great dreams, but when you actually talk to them, they're so far away from reality where you feel like, you know, I love you and I'm rooting for you, but I'm not sure if you're going to make it, you know. But people who understand like the dirt of what it takes, I mean, I don't give a fuck what your ambition is. If your foundation is that strong, you will end up somewhere, because I feel like the universe would just reward you, you know, you're putting in the work, like cause and effect. If you're constantly making causes, you will get an effect. So,
definitely.
Just so
you
happy
see
to
that
hear
more and more. It becomes more and more apparent as you get. Well, first of all, you need to be aware of that, the fact that it's a possibility. Something happened around, I don't know, I guess it was probably around 28 for me, where no longer was it just some woo-woo, potentially, positive bullshit of me saying manifestation, it'll bring it closer to you, blah, blah. It actually it got to a point where I didn't need to worry anymore because I knew if I put in the work, I would get certain results. I could bet on it that securely. It's that quote, God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the call. So I'll say it again because it never made sense to me until a few years ago. God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the call, meaning it's the people that are working towards what they know they should be working at, whether that's improving relationships or going after a dream or just doing the right thing. It's the people calling, it's the people working towards the light, towards the truth, that all of a sudden you get these graceful things put into your life, people and places and things that are meant to help you along your journey. You won't get those when you're not calling for the right things. He doesn't show up, and whenever I say this, people all of a sudden they jump and think like I'm an extra religious person, and I guess in some senses I am. But when I talk about God, I'm not just talking about Jesus' dad or a Buddha. It's light. I'm talking about light and positivity. That's all. And I think you do really see that you can pull things into your life. That are things start happening that you just shake your head and you go, these are fucking lottery odds. The odds of this thing that just happened to me are higher than the last person who won the lottery. How the hell do I meet someone that's so aligned with what I'm talking about, and we can have this conversation, and these things fall into place? You start to see those things happen, and you just got to keep working, like you said. For anyone doing something like what you and I are doing, or trying to build a following, and they're doing it organically without bots or anything it's going to take a little while. But one of the things that really has helped me out with, staying on track is, first of all, if anybody gives me kudos or writes me a personal message or a thank you or something they learned from the podcast, I screenshot that bitch and I put it into an album somewhere called Tourage Love, so on a shit day I can open that up and I could go through there. And the second thing is, listen, if you have, 50 views on a video, 100 views on 100 likes on a post, or views on a video, when you look at these people with thousands and hundreds of thousands, and you're like, shit, I'd like to get sponsors, but, I need at least 10,000 views a video to get any sponsors, or at least the traditional route. It's like, don't forget, if you're talking about shit that has substance to it, if you put 50 people in a room and even just 25 are actually engaged with what you're talking about, you're making a fucking difference, right? You put 100 people in a room that hear just a short piece of this conversation that perks them up to going after their dream. You are making a real difference. And that's not what a lot of these people that use bots and buy likes and, use these fake accounts to jack up their shit. They might think that they feel good, but that's a facade, that's not real. It's not tangible.
100%. I feel like this was the biggest thing I learned from Gary, is not paying attention to numbers. Because he said, it's not about how many followers you have, but who follows you, What if you have one follower and that's Obama, You never know how that turns out. So, I mean, it's very ignorant of people to judge on how good something is based on followers. Because as long as you're interacting with people, I remember, do you watch Shark Tank by any chance? Are you aware of it?
Yeah.
So I remember one time, because I'm so much in the scene and stuff like that, I remember Kevin O'Leary, who's Mr. Wonderful, his publicist landed up on my page and she was liking my post because I posted something about Kevin and this and that. And that's when I was thinking it is such a strategy to not let my ego or, my sense of worth and how impactful what I'm doing is because it's not about numbers, it's about who's watching. And as long as I'm good and I believe in what I'm doing and I like what I'm putting out, it's just a matter of time when the outside real world who does not care about the followers actually ends up make something happening. So that's why you should never give a fuck about your views and stuff. Just be you. You never know who's watching.
I mean, in so many ways, you give me so much faith in the world because I feel, well, You're in India. I'm not really sure about the culture in India, but in America, something really funny happened in the education system in the university 2013 to 2015, around that time where words suddenly became dangerous and, the woke movement made people stray away from difficult conversations. So to hear someone who is only 22 with all this knowledge already in your head, that gives me so much faith. I gotta tell you, that makes me so happy. The old soul remark earlier was in no way to say that I don't think you look your age, right? But you come off as wise beyond your years, and that's huge. I mean, you're probably helping so many other people that are, of the same age bracket, because you really notice in America when the differences in communication alone when you start talking to someone. The kids are getting younger and younger. A 22-year-old in America is not the same as a 22-year-old in America 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And yes, you could say that respectively for all of time, but one would argue that the digital age, the moment the phone came off of the wall and things became digital, the world is more different in 1 year than it's ever been in the 5, 10, or 20 years before it, depending on what capacity you look in it. So this is the first time in all of humanity that what a mother and father told their kid for advice, for a lot of practical ways to live and make a living and a career, couldn't be more off mark. It comes from great intention, and they're going to have a lot of really great, valuable lessons and knowledge to pass on to you. But when it comes to advising certain things in the digital age, like career, how to make money, who to be as far as your outward-facing appearance, etc., it couldn't be more different. I mean, even when Jesus Christ was alive, what the parents told their children was more similar to what parents told their children in the 80s than it was today. Today it is so different.
Yeah, the world has drastically changed in the past 10 years. It's changed more than it changed in like 50 or 100 years. And it was huge. Yeah. And thank you so much for saying those great things about me. I think the reason I've built up on the way I've built myself is because of people like Gary, of people like you who've lived their life and who have learned so much, and with their failures and with their successes, and they kept on, putting it out in the world. And I never wanted to learn from teachers and whatnot. I wanted to learn from people who've had real experiences, And when in the business world, it wasn't just about how to be a great marketer, how to be a great salesperson. When it was about being a good person, when it was about being self-aware, when it was about empathy, then you adjust to the new world like you're talking about, Like being a great marketer is not really going to get you anywhere if you're a piece of shit. Because in the social media world, people can see through you, There's so much content out there. So, I think I'm just building myself up from what I'm learning through the internet and whatnot. And that's why I'm saying, thank you so much for even giving me a chance to, come on my podcast. That boosts my self-confidence up and helps me get to learn so much from you. And if I did not have that opportunity, then, I would not grow like that. So I'm just learning from real life stuff.
It's a pleasure. It's only a matter of time for you. You will
thank you so much.
Are you in school for marketing, or are you doing it all off the cuff, like your own self-education with things like Gary and other people?
I didn't go to college. I quit college, and after school, I just was like, I want to learn how to make money. And I discovered Gary, and I discovered a lot of people. I thought, in India, it's a very kind of like in Asia, actually, it's a very male-dominant place and it's also very an old dominant place. Older people, people don't take the youth seriously. They always feel like you're kids. Because the youth aren't treated as individuals. They're always kids. Because in America, after you're 18, you're off to college and then you're on your own, right? People over here, after their college, their parents are usually paying for their college. And then you also you stay with your family here. So you're always it's a very family-oriented thing. And when it's a family-oriented thing, they always want to know who's your dad. What does he do? So your individuality is not from who I am. It's who my dad is and what does he do and how much money does he make. So even if I would go to today a car dealership and be hey, I want to get a car, no one would take me seriously and no one would even attend me properly just because I'm a girl and I'm so young. Because they're like, oh, you're not making any money, because people usually don't over here. So that, and that was the reason where I was also really bullied in school. by my teachers, not so much the students. So I had already really given up a lot of faith in school, and I decided that this is all bullshit and I want to create my path and I want to create my own way. And my school is not telling me how to do that on business and stuff, because they're teaching me about billboards and advertisements on television, which and books that are written in 2008 by people who've never built a business by themselves. So I wanted to learn from like real people who've done real things, and Gary was one of them. And I really admired this YouTuber Jake Paul. He was one of them. People look at him as like just a really crazy content creator, but he's such a solid business person. And I'm really good at reading people like that, so I saw through that. And that's how I started building up on things and started doing things. So when I knew I haven't gone to college, I have nothing to offer, and I might not have any information. With that chip on my shoulder, I started reading every business book possible. I started consuming Gary like anything, and not like listening to his content, but I would have a notebook and I would have a pencil, and I was making notes. I was writing my own books, I was writing my chapters, and that's how I started educating myself. So sorry this was such a long answer, but then that's how I kind of really got into marketing and social media and sales and like just learning about the world, because social media is the game, irrespective of what you're doing today. That's how communicating with people. So that's how I kind of got into it.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And honestly, you're gonna get so much more out of that. I'm not obviously too familiar with the education system and what something like a curriculum for marketing would be over in India, but you're gonna get a better education by looking at anyone who's actually done it, for sure. I mean, in America, so many people go into the business school and they go into marketing, and they think they're gonna, come out with this amazing creative position, and really because they went to that school and took the degree to the next step, which is a marketing position and usually a corporation, most people that get marketing degrees in America just end up budgeting numbers in a system, digital numbers. It's not really about the creative aspect that they actually wanted to have.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I run to the bathroom real quick?
No, please go ahead.
Okay, real quick. I'm over here. Okay, sorry.
No, please. I'm so happy you candid with me, because I could just think you would be really awkward to ask, and I'm glad you did.
I'm on my, I try to do a gallon of water a day. I woke up at 4 a.m., so I've had a little bit of a head start today. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
No, please don't be.
I know we've been going for a while, but I figured I would at least share with you. So I went to the UMass Amherst Eisenberg School of Business. I had a business major, and then I minored in communications, media, and psychology. Mm-hmm. And after going through a business school for management, there were a few things I learned after school that just basically took everything I learned and kind of threw it under the rug, and there was a new way to think about it. And one of the more interesting pieces was the motivational drivers, which is just important for, I think, anybody to know about in all communications. If you can be good at sales, you can be good at communicating with the world. The whole what's in it for them aspect of sales, right? So whenever you need to answer the question, because I'm big on interns, right? Every company I've ever had, I bring on interns. Now I have interns, but a lot of them work for me for free. So you need to, that's a big what's in it for them, right? If you can answer the question of what's in it for them when they work for you for free. But when I learned about the motivational drivers, that really helped me think about how to different forms of communicating. And it goes a little something like this. Everybody operates primarily on one of a handful of different motivational drivers throughout their life. So if you looked at life like you have your family bracket, your career bracket, whatever it is, they operate on a motivational driver. And those drivers are the drive to learn, the drive to acquire, the drive to defend, and what's the last one? Drive to learn, acquire, defend, and bond. The drive to bond. Yeah. So if I explain this in the sense of you're trying to do a business interaction with someone, let's say you're selling them a product or service, and now you're talking to someone. Well, they're going to operate on one of those drivers. And you'll know these things because if the person you're talking to just needs this product because they're trying to make their boss happy and they need to get it in by a certain date, and that's it. Like, listen, all I got to do is get it in by this date. Okay, drive to acquire. You're going to talk to a drive to acquire much differently than a drive to learn. You got an IT guy. He wants to learn a lot about this product before it gets implemented in his business. There's no definitive timeline. He's not trying to make anyone happy except make sure that it works. Okay, you don't need to give the drive to acquire guy all the nitty gritty about this will connect with your servers and this will be able to implement with all your other systems and integrate well. But the drive to learn guy, you got to give that all to him. He's going to like you a lot better if you could give him all the specific info that he needs, right? The drive to bond, this could be someone that you start talking and you realize immediately that they could, it's about how much they like you or how much their colleagues like them. Whatever they need to do to make them happy, or this is the type of person that you realize after 2 minutes of a call that they're more happy talking about the Red Sox game or something like that. This is the person that you drop into their office. Hey, you want to go and get lunch right away, right? You can do lunch with anyone, but this is going to be someone that's going to talk less about work. You could get a little bit more personal with the person that is operating on the drive to bond and the drive to defend, right? If you're replacing a system at somebody's job and you're trying to sell them that system and they work in that system, right? They might seem like they hate you. They don't care about the information that you're sending them. It all seems great. But if what they're doing is defending their way of life, meaning if we get this new product, my day-to-day changes. I have no idea how to work in this day-to-day. I've been working in SAP, Oracle, IBM, whatever this software is my entire life, right? Are you going to make my job irrelevant? You need to show this person pieces of the demo, pieces of the product that will improve how they do their job now, make their lives easier, focus on that, then give them whatever else they want. Those drivers, when you can realize if it's a business transaction, which one someone is operating under, you get to trim a lot of fat in the sales cycle in the process of actually getting them to buy or engage with you. And that was one of the more enlightening business aspects that I learned about after college, that college didn't give me at all. They gave me Maslow's hierarchy of needs and, ways to manage people effectively, but they don't give you experience. I learned more in one
100%.
job of managing than I learned in my entire business school.
100%. I believe that. Like, I feel like business is like working out. You can't read about it. You got to do it. And the maximum, I've spoken with a lot of like super, super big business people. And I was like, how'd you get started? How did you learn? And it was always something along the lines of how they were working for someone. And for years, they observed how they operated and they thought, I could do it better. And then they built their business. So it was never like, wow, I read something in a book and also like a book written by who. But actually like observing and what the realities and the nuances of it you can never get and you can never read about it until you actually experience it. So with business, like Gary always says it, if you want to become like P. Diddy or, like a music executive or something like that, like get as closest to the sun as possible. That's where you learn the real shit and you start absorbing it and you become it. So I think that's where like interning for free and working for free and, like working for minimum wage is the biggest asset. And it's very like strategic actually. You might like actually be getting paid for something and might not even be like the top person you want to work with versus you working with the top person, you're not getting paid anything. So you sacrificing that, you'll be way ahead in like 1 year than most people would be in 5 years, So it's very smart
and
actually.
You read my mind. But the moment you brought up the working for free, I'm over here thinking, working for free, give it away for free. Do it for free now because it's priceless in a way. What you're going to be able to get out of that, the networking, the overall knowledge and experience of being able to see how it's done. And I think humans are natural innovators. So if you are a human that labels yourself an innovator, you kind of got one up on everyone else. If you're good at observing, that movie, keep your eyes shut or keep your mouth shut and your eyes open, you can learn a thing or two, You can really absorb that in there. And that's what my brother and I are doing here while we start our creative agency. We're giving a lot away for free. I've already done 4 jobs since I've been on the island in October that are with big entertainment companies. I'm doing it for free. Just do it for free. So
I think that's how you get your first clients. I think Gary also said how he worked for free for like clients like Pepsi and Budweiser when he was starting out VaynerMedia. And once he got to work with them, he could leverage their name to get to the next clients and actually get paid for that. But if he never ended up working for free and thinking, like, oh, I'm Gary Vee, I just built a business from 3 to 60 million. But he got humble and he knew that how strategic it was. So I have so much respect for that. And I think like you follow Gary, so you know that definitely you're on the right trajectory to, do what you want to do. And on that note, what would you say is your ambition or end goal? Like, what are you trying to build and accomplish?
Okay, so in 10 years, I would like to create a gym for the mind. I will call it Hiatus. Think about a place that same size as a regular big gym, except the facility and same business model. Like you pay as a membership, but in that room, instead of Zumba on Wednesdays and Fridays, you got a guest art teacher teaching a specific way to do painting. There's a recording studio. There's a podcast studio. It is a creative space to create community. The difference is that the establishment has the following and has the connections. So you want to make prints of your artwork. We have all the suppliers and the distribution. You want to make a song, good. We have people that come to this facility that will be your in-house engineer, right? They're interning, they're not big yet. It's a win-win-win for everybody. A place to create art and make community. So the way I think about it is in 2021, if an artist would like to make any money off of their work, whether that's pocket change or a complete living, an artist needs to be an entrepreneur. And let's face it, most artists are horrible entrepreneurs. And a lot of times, an artist should just be left alone to make their work. A lot of these people should not need to go through the shit that we're dealing with now. Like, how do I make social media better? And how do I post this? They should just be an artist somewhere.
Yeah.
And I want to create a facility that caters to the one that wants to learn how to run it themselves and the one that wants nothing to do with running it themselves, but we can still put money in your pocket. So more fair than the music industry, right? So you come in, maybe you're just in this class because Samson and your other friend are there, and you used to draw when you were in high school, you stopped drawing, so you just came because you wanted to hang out with creatives and be in this class. I walk by, our talent scouts see your stuff. Hey, this is really awesome. Listen, we'll sell these for 30 a piece. We got the platform for it and everything, right? We'll take a percentage. We'll take $10. We could just put $20 in your pocket every time we sell one of these. Or we can teach you how you can carry this process from start to finish on your own. But a facility that helps be the forefront in entrepreneurial knowledge for the artist, while allowing them the ability to scale without being ripped off for a tremendous amount. It takes a lot of money to make your first album or your first podcast, even if you have any of the equipment that I have, or to go out and make prints. I want a facility that fosters community and is a source of entrepreneurial knowledge for the artist. So that's why I started the podcast, because that facility is going to need investors, is going to need the right space, is going to need a lot of stuff. I'm sharpening my sword in every discipline that is going to need to build that. And for now, to start the audience, I'm doing the podcast. So the podcast is the non-tangible, physical thing.
Yeah.
So
I think that's amazing. It's really funny because I get exactly what you're saying. And I'll expand more onto that. I think what you're trying to do is like you're creating infrastructure behind talent, because the talent needs to focus on their craft. But if they actually want to live off their craft, like we talked about, it needs business and it needs execution. And like you said, let's face it, not even 10% people have the bandwidth to make that happen. And nor do they have an infrastructure where they can just go. Either they have labels who would be ripping them off and actually not. And it's very like one-dimensional, like, oh, we'll help you sell this album more and we'll help you get it out into more. But you want a whole 360-degree development for the artist. Like, you can make money, you can become a better person. This is your whole world right here, like one-stop shop for everything. And that is what they need. Now, though I mentioned like I really love BTS, and are you aware of them?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, because they're amazing and of course they're extremely talented and everything, but the reason I was so fascinated by them is because how they built, and how they built was in Korea specifically. They do have artists, but it's not like an American artist thing where they have labels or where the artist is independent. They have agencies, and they mainly have like three major agencies where they would pick up the artist and they would be trainees for a very long time. They would just be under training. And training is not singing coaches or dancing coaches. Trainee is everything. They'll teach you about life. They'll teach you, like, building you as a human being, because now your face is their money, like your brand image and who you are as a person is money for them. So they create a whole 360 development around artists, on how they're even working out, on how is their mental stability, on how to refine them more as human beings so their craft actually gets better. Like they'll dig deep into you to become a better human being, and only when you can reflect can you communicate. If you're really like on the surface person, what do you want to sing about? So that's what they do. And when BTS happened, it was this one guy. His name is Hitman Bang. That's how he goes. And these three agencies were the topmost Korean agencies, and no one could ever compete with them because they had all the infrastructure. But then this one agency came around, Big Hit Entertainment, and that is exactly what they did. They took BTS in and they trained them as trainees, helping them refine their image, helping them develop as human beings. And all they had to do was focus on their craft. So at that one stop shop, they also had lawyers if they want to fight like battles, or they also had like gym and training. Everything was happening there, and that's how BTS is built today. Now, what's amazing about it is how this person built his company and how he turned BTS became his IP. So all these artists that would be under you would be your intellectual property, because essentially you've bred them, like BTS is money. If this bottle today is for $10, but if it has BTS on it, it's gonna be for 50. That's IP, like a pencil box is just like for $50, but a Marvel pencil box is for $100, and that percentage is going to Marvel. So BTS and Big Hit is exactly that. It's a universe, it's an infrastructure, it's a company. And I think that's what you're trying to create. Like, though Marvel is fiction, but essentially it was an IP creator where it took care of the character development and all sorts of shit. And when you got them to their peak, you leveraged them to create revenue streams, like whether it could be merchandise or concert tickets. So these artists that are under you, who are doing concerts, or a painter that's under you, they would do an exhibition and sell paintings. Everything, a percentage of them is coming back to the infrastructure you gave them. And essentially they can sell their music or they can sell their artists because you made them, you literally like took like a stone and turned it into a diamond. You know what I'm saying? And just to help you, I'm sorry this is so long, but so
No, I'm enjoying it.
So the BTS's main person, the guy who created BTS's label, he releases these community corporate briefings. So when you're over like $1 billion, you're supposed, and they're a unicorn company now, and they started from nothing. And it's been like 10 years since they're under operation. So he had to list all his numbers, how much revenue they're getting, where they're getting the revenue, and they have to lay out all their further plans for the year. So he released this thing called Community Corporate Briefing. It's super like businessy massively, but you're into it, so you'll enjoy it. I'll send you a link to it. I recommend you learn how this human's mind operates and how he's doing exactly what you want to do. Even though he's doing that with one artist, now he started signing more artists and he's in the music scene. But you want to do it with talent. It could even be a dancer, it could be a singer, it could be a painter, it could be, like just talent. Because those are the people who actually have a hard time building a business and transitioning that talent into, money. So
what did you say it was called? Community what? Co-op?
Community Cooperative Briefing. I'll send you a link to it. And that's where he lays down all his fucking plans on how he's going about it, where is his mindset, how is he thinking, and it's very relevant to what you're talking about. And that's why I fell in love with BTS, because it's just such a genius execution. And it's been all documented, by the way. They've been doing it for 10 years. You see BTS in a really like shady room with like a super like cheap ass camera talking, just talking about shit. And you see their whole journey. Like Gary was talking about Drake before Drake. BTS is bigger than Drake today. So you can see BTS from the beginning to now. And it's so cool because you are into content creation, and so you'd appreciate that aspect of it. You understand people, so how authentic they are, you'd understand that aspect of it, and you're into business and how geniusly they executed on that business plan. So you'll be able to see that. And that's why when you were talking, I really got it, because that's where I fell in love with the business. I was like, this is revolutionary and brilliantly executed.
No, thank you for going in depth about it. I'm very excited to look into them more, into that story more. 100%.
Yeah, and
It sounds very aligned with what I want to do.
yeah,
And and once again, like you said, going to the people that have already been successful at something that you want to do,
yeah,
and tapping into their story. And there's a reoccurring thing here about the overall development of an artist, where you'll hear, like the warrior of the light, or in a lot of spiritual texts, the most sophisticated warrior ever known is also the one that is good at poetry and is good at a handful of other things. They need to be a good, well-rounded person. And there's definitely this aspect of, like you were saying, IP. And then another thing I'd been thinking of was around a school. Having some sort of school element to the business to keep the wheels turning and the lights on as it gets going. I think one of the best advice you could give any entrepreneur is, if that entrepreneur is an artist, then you find a lot of people, they make their best product and then they don't know how many hours went into it. They don't ask for enough money for it. If you want to set your own market, you should have something that you're always creating. That one t-shirt with the simple logo that keeps the lights on. That's $40 a t-shirt, $30 a t-shirt. You can always make those are easy. But then you also have these other ones that are only 100 of them ever made, and you charge $300 a t-shirt, something like that. The artistry where you could set your market and get a lot for the really good thing, but you always have something in the background turning and getting you some profit on the low end. So in that metaphoric regard, it's like a school would always be bringing in the profit on the low end, whether you're teaching someone how to do a podcast, how to communicate, how to draw, whatever it is. A school is a very good aspect to have here. And I like that we're both aligned with this. I think artists need to be saved in 2021.
Of course.
It's like one of the most heartbreaking things is around the time high school into college, I knew all these people. They were so good at singing, at drawing, at painting, whatever it was. They were passionate about something they were good at, but somewhere along the way, the world beat the shit out of them, and they didn't have, their own platform wasn't big enough. So why do people create? I would argue it's to share something they love with someone else they love, or with a community of people. Here's something I love, I want to show people. And I feel like when people lose the platform to show people, and then they, it's in America and anywhere, it's hard enough just to keep the lights on and the rent paid.
Yeah.
And if you need to work 40 hours a week to do that, your soul could get sucked out of it. Right? I think artists are dying at the fastest rate that they've ever been dying in all of history, while we also need art to save the world. So I think that business plans like BTS and community centers that have to do with art are like some of the most important things that the world needs right now.
I agree. So, like we were talking about how you learn through observation, and since it's a very innovative and a very disruptive idea on how to manage artists, you will learn so much from it because you can see it in execution. And it's all in Korean, by the way, so you have to read the subtitles.
Oh, that's
But
fine.
it's a gem. And they actually do go through like a school-like system where they're trainees. And they would have like 100 people who are training and only 5 people who would debut. Debut means actually showing your face to the world. So it's very much like what you're talking about. And I actually, it sounds very restricted, but he spoke about how he treats craft, and how he treats like music as a craft, and how he treats like the game of music as Olympics. So if you're launching for Olympics, you have a specific diet, you have a specific, like, you need to be at a certain weight, you need to have a certain lifestyle. And that's how he talks about when you debut and when you're actually committing to art, you need to have that rigorous of a discipline, which in America, the music industry is all about like, oh my god, if you're on drugs, if you're overdosing, if you're about bitches, like that's being you. But then he says no, like, he thinks otherwise. He thinks, I think I need to respect my art and I need to let go of certain things to actually like really lean into it. And it's not expressing my individuality if I'm going into toxic behavior and doing dumb shit, which is kind of praised over here. So it's really interesting like that.
Yeah, and even though that is a heavy theme in America, the ones that stand out and last and are still doing it and have the most enlightened fan bases, and they're still around after many years of doing the craft, those are ones that understand that message, that you need to give something up and put in more time in other directions. And they talk about it in their work. You see that.
Yeah.
It does blow my mind how some of these people that are famous right now can have such a big following, which makes me stand up and be a bodhisattva in training and try to push the good shit, because I don't know how the fuck this dude got popular. But, you got to make a difference.
100%. And I feel like you were talking about like giving an artist an infrastructure. I was doing this on a very small line and I got this while doing my podcast. So if I find an artist, and I understand that an artist needs an infrastructure, you can't just sing and do shit. You need a music video, you need someone to create content, so you need someone to click pictures, you need a producer, you need an audio engineer, you need so many different aspects to actually release something. So when I was doing my podcast, I came across artists, I came across music photographers, I came across producers, directors, audio engineers, and I got along with all of them. So I was like, everyone can relate to me, we love each other. And now if I want to help an artist, because I have an infrastructure of people ready with me, I can connect all of them. I was like, you need a music producer? Why don't you talk to him? And just create a barter system. Instead of like, both of you might not have money to give to each other, but what you can do is create a barter system. So if you're a music photographer, I told this guy, every artist needs content today, and they need music videos and stuff like that. Why don't you sign up a contract with them where you say, when you make money, not right now, but when you make money, I'll take 20% of that for the next 3 years. So you're pushing them as artists on your platform. The artist is pushing himself. When his content gets better, it gets more traction. So both of you are helping each other grow, and you will grow because every music video of his says, directed by so-and-so. If you do that for 10 people, for 100 people, one of them will fucking hit.
Oh, yeah.
And then boom goes everything. You know what I'm saying? So you don't really need a physical infrastructure to make things happen today. You can connect people, do things online, and make a lot of stuff happen, because infrastructure is not just like a physical building, but it's also like resources and human resources. So that
it's a
idea.
Win-win-win. I like to call those win-win-win ideas. Literally, it's something's in it for you, something's in it for them, and if you look on either side of the fence, both deals are worth taking. It really is a barter system, and that's why I always interns. If you're an entrepreneur or you're already at a company or you're trying to, if you have something to add and you bring on an intern, what's in it for them? You know what I've done with 5 kids that gave me 5 hours a week is just so much more organic and better than I could have ever done with any bots or anything like that. And you have a lot of these kids that are in college or not in college, but the next step wants to be, I want to work for Sony Def Jam, or I want to be in the entertainment industry, but the only thing on their resume is some, a pizza shop, and they did a couple of small, they babysat or something like that. Yeah. It's one of the best things I ever heard was a master chef has all the ingredients in the kitchen. It's up to him how he puts them on the plate for presentation. Yeah. The plate being the resume. Okay? You can work for me for 5 hours a week. I could teach you a few very important principles that maybe you've learned through Gary Vee, or I've learned through my experience in corporate America, whatever it is. But now I teach you and help you write your resume. They don't care who the hell you did it for. They just want to know that those bullet points are something that you could talk about that are relatable to the job you are going to be doing in the future. If you can make it commission-based, great. And if the college will give them credit for their work, even better. Because now You get 1 day a week for a social media push, for an editing push, whatever it may be. But that kid can still have another job and still be in school. And it's a win-win-win because their other job is probably not going to fulfill these bullet points to get them their dream job.
Yeah.
And you can help them with that. So if you can delegate the right way, I feel like interns can really help small businesses and startups and entrepreneurs get their feet off of the ground. You know, it's what you were saying about networking and putting these people together. It's just if you literally put them under your own umbrella, you know. So in the future, when hiatus opens and there is a recording studio, you know, it costs so much money to have an engineer. But if you have someone that uses your facility and they're a great engineer, then let them use the facility for free a certain number of hours a week with the understanding that they need to put 5 to 10 community hours of engineering services towards an artist that wants to be recorded in the facility. It's a win-win-win. While they increase their network and while an artist gets pretty good engineering on their track, they get to make some money. The artist gets to save some money on their engineer, and next thing you know, they're working and meeting more people and creating a community. So it's funny how you could integrate the networking and the helping out of these people that need a photographer and need this and that. When you make it official, they can have on their resume that they're an intern for your business and they can only do one project for you a year. It's just, hey, I thought of you. You're a great photographer. I know this person that I'm working with. They need some pictures, right? They're not lying if they put on their LinkedIn or on their resume that they interned for your business and they write down the bullet points of what they did in that one job. It doesn't need to mean they have to be there weekly or 40 hours a week. And most of the time, the other employer doesn't mind. You know, an employer doesn't ask a kid, hey, was this a full-time or part-time internship? And if you say part-time, they leave it at that. They're not asking how many hours or anything. It's up to you how you put it on the plate. Can you present these? Can you be taught how to articulate in the correct way what an employer for XYZ position wants to hear? And I think that's where I'm at right now. I just moved to Hawaii, so working with the local university to get these kids a credit-oriented internship that they have the ability to make commission off of and to help me out and learn some stuff along the way is where I'm putting the groundwork in right now.
That's really dope. And I think people really need to have that conversation so much more because that is essentially like the resume stuff is actually what gets the ball rolling for you when people read it. And it might be really underestimated at this point of time. So what you're doing is, I think it's really impactful for the kids and even for the companies that might miss out on great talent just because they did not know how to communicate, you know?
Yeah. And the artist. I mean, the artist that doesn't want to do that. You know, if think about if a kid sat down with less than 5 hours with you for 1 week and just what's something that you don't want to do that's easy? Can you go into my YouTube channel? I'll say, hey, can you go in here? Go onto their Instagram, find a nice picture of them. Go into an Illustrator, and I just want all these fonts to be the same. Can you just put, for everyone I don't have this, episode 7, episode 6. And I've done nothing while they get social media experience, they get digital marketing experience, they get to put all that on their resume, and now all my YouTube icons look better, you know? That's something I'm working on right now, so that's actually speaking from experience there, but...
That's fantastic, and really, really smart, by the way.
I've always found, hey, turn on your Facebook Live, your Instagram chat, your etc. Okay, this is not about how many people's pages you can go through and like pictures on and comment of. This is about that one person's page you just got to. Interact with them in a sincere way. What does Gary Vee call it? The $8.89 strategy. He calls it something like that.
2 cents. Like leave your 2 cents. Yeah.
Leave your 2 cents. Yeah. Actually engage with them though. Like the pictures you actually like. Comment your real thoughts about it, right? So you give them some likes, there's a jab. You give them a comment about something that makes them feel good. You give them a follow, there's another jab. You start the conversation with them, right? And you could tell them, all right, let me teach you about setting expectations in the sales process. Let me teach you about qualification in the sales process. All we're doing here is trying to get likes and followers, but I could teach you a few principles about how you interact with this person on social media in a few minute time period that will teach you so much of what you need to learn overall about the sales process. And that's invaluable to a kid that's never done sales or marketing before. I mean, if you know how to set the expectation, drive the call, drive the conversation, these are things that only come from experience, but you need to know the principle first.
To ask you this last question, where is there something that you want to share with the viewers? Any advice, like a major advice that you feel like that really shaped you, or a learning, or something like that?
I mean, obviously, it's not to give up. I've had some very bad days in my life. I've gone through some things. We never got into those things, but I've gone through the lowest of lows with things like depression and grief from things that have happened. Yeah. There are some moments that you just you don't think anyone else could relate. You don't really place any faith in things being able to work out.
Yeah.
It is only temporary. Sometimes you have good days, good weeks, good years. Sometimes you have a horrible set of years, a horrible month, a horrible day. Every time that's happening, it is the universal balance that shit is not about to happen for you in a little while. You just got to plug through. And going back to that short list, whether we're talking about dealing with grief, loss, depression, anxiety, etc., I've gone through the ringer with doctors after I got thrown out of a Jeep on the highway and landed on my head, PTSD, all of this shit. The most important thing while you pursue any dream or anything is fulfill that short list, okay? Sincere interaction and time with family and friends, break a sweat, meditate, get good sleep, eat healthy. You can be in the worst place in your entire life, but just to know you check those 5 things off in your day will give you momentum into building more discipline, getting more done, and placing faith into tomorrow. So just invest in yourself, invest in your well-being. There are sometimes you need to take a break. Sometimes it takes low periods to get through certain things, but if you fulfill that short list, everything else will be easier. And I'm 31 and finally got a grip on meditating every day, on eating healthy, on making sure I get at least 7 hours of sleep. Yeah. And it makes you a better person all around. So I think don't give up. Don't give up in the short list.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I mean, I think real life experiences from if you've gone through genuine depression, that's when it makes sense for you to talk about it, and a lot of when you share about your depression, people would always feel like, wow, I should say something, I should give you some advice. But when you've not gone through that, it's completely irrelevant to me. But when someone's actually gone that, and for them to have the courage and the heart to accept it and let the other person know that I've gone through it and you'll get out of it, is really invaluable. And I also feel like we have so much still to talk about because we were able to connect on so many different aspects. I did have a couple of questions, but I did not feel like we needed questions because it was such a smooth conversation because we were able to really relate with each other. So if you'd want, we would definitely can do a part 2 and do another episode and have it continue.
Yeah, give it a few months and get some other groundwork in, and we can definitely revisit it. I think that'd be good, even if it was a consecutive thing into the far future, right? We can touch base with each other.
100%.
But thank you very, very much for having me on. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you, likewise. Thank you so much for coming on. I hope you accomplish everything that you want to, and I hope you meet amazing people and find that momentum that you're looking for. And I will send you a link to that video that I was telling you about, and I hope that you get a lot of value out of it. I know you will.
Thank you. Oh, last question. Do you have plants in the room that you're in?
Plants? No, this is my drawing room.
Oh, okay.
Why?
Do you keep plants in your place? No, because I don't know if you saw me swiping throughout the interview. I have so many plants in my apartment. I had some gnats, and I was like, is that a gnat in her screen as well, or is that just the gnat flying out of my plant? Okay, never mind.
No, but I do have a garden on the ground floor, so I do get I understand where your troubles are coming from, but not currently.
What time is it there?
It's 3 a.m. now. So
Damn. Thank you so much for staying up.
no, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. And I can't wait to speak to you super soon. And we'll stay in touch.
Okay, awesome.
All right.
All right,
Bye.
you.
Thank you so much.